The first time I heard about that abandoned cabin selling for just $1, I honestly thought it was some kind of cruel joke. I mean, out here in the Wild West, nothing that cheap comes without a story. And not just any story, but the kind that makes grown men hesitate before stepping inside. So when I tell you what really happened, I want you to picture yourself right there beside me. Dust in the air, wind howling low, and that uneasy silence stretching across the hills. Because this wasn't just about a cabin, it was about something waiting inside it. Something patient, something quiet, something that had been there longer than anyone realized. And the strangest part is, it wasn't waiting for just anyone passing through. No, it had been waiting for one man, and one man alone. And somehow, against all odds, that man finally arrived that very day. Now listen close, because the man I'm talking about wasn't your typical drifter or outlaw. He was known simply as Eli, a mountain man who preferred solitude over crowded towns. He spent years living off the land, hunting, trapping, and speaking mostly to the wind. Folks in nearby settlements said he had eyes that noticed things others missed entirely. And maybe that's why he was the one who saw the listing nobody else believed. A cabin, abandoned for decades, sold for $1 single, no questions asked. Most people laughed it off, calling it cursed or haunted by restless spirits. But Eli didn't laugh, not even once, because something about it felt different. He couldn't explain it, but deep down, he felt like it was calling him. And when something calls a man like Eli, he doesn't ignore it. The journey up the mountain wasn't easy, not by any stretch of imagination. Rocky paths twisted like snakes, and the cold wind bit through layers of clothing. But Eli moved steadily, as if something unseen was guiding every step forward. Hours turned into an entire day before the cabin finally came into view. It stood crooked against the hillside, weathered with whispering stories of forgotten years. The windows were dark, almost like hollow eyes staring back at him silently. Even the animals seemed to avoid the place, keeping their distance without explanation. That alone would have turned most men right back down the mountain trail. But Eli just stood there, studying it carefully, feeling that same strange pull. Then, without hesitation, he stepped forward and claimed what was now his. The door creaked open slowly, louder than it should have in the still air. Inside, dust floated through dim light, disturbed for the first time in years. Every corner looked untouched, like time itself had paused within those walls. A chair sat near the fireplace, slightly turned, as if someone had just left. Eli noticed small details, things others would have dismissed without second thought. There was a faint scent, not decay, but something strangely familiar and human. It didn't match the idea of abandonment, not even close to it. That's when the silence shifted, not louder, but heavier, almost expectant somehow. Eli's instincts sharpened instantly, every sense alert to something hidden nearby. And then, from the far corner, he heard the softest sound imaginable. At first, it sounded like the wind slipping through cracks in old wood. But then it came again, quieter this time, almost like a whispered breath. Eli turned slowly, eyes narrowing, focusing on the darkest part of the room. There, near the back wall, something moved just slightly out of shadow. Not fast, not threatening, but deliberate enough to send a chill down his spine. Most men would have reached for a weapon right then and there. But Eli didn't, because something deep inside told him not to be afraid. Instead, he took a step closer, careful, steady, and completely silent. The movement stopped, and for a moment, everything froze into perfect stillness. Then a voice, soft and trembling, finally broke through the heavy air. "I knew you would come," the voice said, barely louder than a whisper. Eli didn't respond immediately, not out of fear, but pure disbelief. Because standing before him was a woman, pale, but very much alive. Her clothes were worn, but not in the way abandonment would suggest. Her eyes, though tired, held a strange certainty that felt almost unreal. She didn't look surprised to see him, not even a little bit. In fact, she looked relieved, like a long wait had finally ended. Eli studied her carefully, trying to understand what he was seeing. "How long have you been here?" he finally asked, voice steady but cautious. And her answer was something that changed everything he thought he knew. "I've been waiting," she said. "Longer than anyone remembers this place." That didn't make sense, not in any way Eli could understand logically. The cabin was supposed to be abandoned, forgotten, untouched for decades. Yet here she stood, alive, speaking, and somehow completely aware of him. Eli stepped closer, noticing there was no fear in her expression at all. "Waiting for who?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. She met his gaze directly, her voice steadier this time than before. "For you," she said simply, as if it was the most obvious truth. The room seemed to grow colder, not with danger, but with realization. Because deep down, Eli felt it too, something connecting them inexplicably. He didn't laugh, didn't question her sanity, didn't try to walk away. Instead, he listened, because every instinct told him this wasn't coincidence. She began to tell her story slowly, as if recalling something distant. Years ago, she had come to the mountains with someone she trusted. But something had gone wrong, something she never fully understood herself. Time had blurred, days turning into something far stranger than ordinary passing. She never aged the way she should have, never felt the world move on. And all that time, she carried one certainty deep within her heart. That someone would come, someone who could finally break the silence. And somehow, against all reason, that someone had become Eli. The fire crackled softly as Eli listened, trying to piece everything together. Nothing about this situation followed the rules he had known his entire life. Yet standing there, looking into her eyes, he couldn't deny what felt real. This wasn't madness, and it wasn't a trick of isolation or exhaustion. There was something deeper, something tied to the land, the cabin, the past. Eli had spent years trusting his instincts, and they had never failed him. And right now, those instincts were telling him to stay, not leave. So he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He set down his gear, took a seat, and chose to believe her. Because sometimes, truth isn't about logic, it's about what you feel. Days passed, and something remarkable began to happen inside the cabin. The air felt lighter, the silence less heavy, almost like something lifted. She began to change too, slowly at first, but undeniably becoming stronger. Color returned to her face, and her voice gained warmth with each passing day. Eli noticed the difference, though he never mentioned it out loud directly. It was as if his presence alone was undoing whatever had held her there. Or maybe it was something they shared, something neither fully understood yet. They talked for hours, about the past, the future, and everything between. And for the first time in years, Eli didn't feel alone anymore. He felt like he had found something he didn't even know he was missing. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains in quiet surrender, she stood by the doorway, looking out as if seeing the world anew. "I think I can leave now," she said softly, almost afraid to believe it. Eli stood beside her, not surprised, but deeply aware of the moment's weight. The cabin no longer felt like a prison, but something finally at peace. Whatever had bound her there had loosened, maybe even completely disappeared. And somehow, it all traced back to the day Eli walked through that door. He didn't claim to understand it, and maybe he never truly would. But some things out here don't need explanations to be real. They just need to be felt, accepted, and lived without fear. They stepped outside together, the mountain air crisp and full of life again. For the first time, she looked at the world without that distant sadness. And Eli, a man who had chosen solitude for most of his life, now stood beside someone who changed everything without trying to at all. The cabin remained behind them, no longer abandoned, no longer forgotten. It had served its purpose, whatever that mysterious purpose truly was. And as they walked down the trail together, something shifted quietly. Not just in their lives, but in the story that would be told afterward. Because sometimes, the strangest tales aren't about fear or danger. They're about connection, timing, and the unexpected ways lives intertwine. So next time you hear about something too strange to be true, maybe don't dismiss it so quickly, especially out here in the wild unknown. Because not every mystery is meant to scare you away from it. Some are meant to lead you exactly where you're supposed to be. And maybe, just maybe, there's something out there waiting for you too. Something patient, something quiet, something that knows your name already. Just like that cabin knew Eli, long before he ever found it. And just like she waited, believing he would eventually arrive someday. Stories like this remind us the world still holds secrets worth discovering. And sometimes, those secrets are meant just for you. If this story pulled you in and made you feel like you were right there with me, then go ahead and hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Share your thoughts down in the comments because I want to hear your take. Would you have walked into that cabin or turned back without looking twice? And if you enjoy these Wild West stories filled with mystery and meaning, stick around, because there are plenty more waiting just around the bend. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your instincts sharp out there, because you never know what might be waiting quietly just beyond your path. And trust me, some stories are far closer to reality than we think. So stay curious, stay brave, and I'll see you in the next one.